aim of African education. So Darnisha called. I was trying to put this together. I got some things, and then I said, "Oh God, I got a doctor's appointment at 3 o'clock," and then they got me in and out. But anyway, enough excuses. I'm just going to go on. So the aim of an African-centered education, that's what we're going to talk about today. And I didn't make up that title. This wonderful scholar, Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, came up with that topic, and he was speaking at an ASCAC conference in the Bay Area in 1988, and I wrote down everything that he was saying. It was at Laney College. And those of you that are not familiar with Dr. Asa G. Hilliard, he's a fantastic scholar, Fulbright scholar. I met him as he was Dean of Education at San Francisco State. And then he went on, Judy, tell me which, where was he at in Atlanta? I can't quite remember. Judy, you remember that?
Yes, he was the head of the Black Studies Department at Georgia State University.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, and so this picture where he has the Kente, he's on Lesterfield Middleton's program. I mean, he used to be all over. And he passed away in 2006. He died of malaria. He had just come back from Ghana, and he was to deliver a keynote address for the ASCAC conference that was taking place in Kemet in 2006. And he was able to deliver that speech. He had to deliver it from a wheelchair. But then the next day, he passed on to the ancestors. Great, great scholar. He's still teaching us, even though we don't see him anymore in the physical. And so he said this, he said, the aims of an African education is to answer the questions for ourselves, where am I? You ever think about that? Where am I? What time is it? What time is it? And who is my family? Where am I? What time is it? And who is my family? He says an African-centered education will tell you who your friends are, who your people are, who other people are, and what is my story? Who your friends are, very important. Sometimes you think people are your friends and they're not. Sometimes people are, smile in your face, but they're not immune from sticking a dagger in your back. Who your people are. We don't know who our people are. We could go to every continent, maybe not Antarctica, but maybe down under the ice, you could find some relics from when we was there then. But, you can go to any continent and you can find African people. And then who other people are. And then what is my story? What is my story? And then he listed these things. He says, there's a cultural unity, people who are linked together by cultures. He's telling us how to look at history, as a prime educator. An educator par excellence. So he's saying there's a cultural unity, people who are linked together by cultures. And then he says the impact of Africa on other cultures. And then he says, beware of Greeks bearing philosophy or mythology. He says we need to focus on our Holocaust story, our Ma'afa story. He says also we need to talk about the story of our resistance. That Africans just didn't, let people, abuse them. They fought back. I was talking to somebody that lives in Georgia, and she's and they were reminding me that just because it's the South, we didn't lay down. That there was resistance in the South. There was some places where whites feared to go because there were Black people there. So there's a story of our resistance. And then there's a story of our creativity. What did we invent? And I like number 6 because everybody now is in the habit of calling each other kings and queens. I don't like to do that personally. I'm not telling you what to do. I wouldn't do that. But for me, I have a hard time doing it. That's why when I send a note or something, I say neteru or neter, which is a principle of the divine. But it was kings and queens who got us here. It was kings and queens, people who wanted privilege, who sold us out for some trinkets from Europe. Okay, that's something we need to get beyond. So he says there's a people history that's more than just kings and queens. And he says we must know the story of the story. There's a story before the story. That's how far we go back. And we must know the story in context in which the facts are situated. And he says, no African story that plays off the European story.
Hi, Marquise.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Can I call you back?
All right. Can you put yourself on mute? All right. Whoever that is. All right. So Dr. Hilliard wrote several books, among which is my favorite is at the top. It's called Saba, The Reawakening of the African Mind. Get that book if you can. These books here, The Maroon Within Us, Selected Essays on African-American Community Socialization. What is quality childcare? Remember, he was an educator, and so he was very concerned with these questions. And then there are many books, Teachings of Imhotep, but he wrote this in 1987, the oldest book in the world, Teachings of Imhotep, African Power, Affirming African Indigenous Socialization in the Face of the Culture Wars. In order for us to understand what's going on now, where they're trying to run some game on and talk about critical race theory. Dr. Hilliard had already analyzed this years before, they even put that out. 50 plus essential references on the history of African people, and then True of Voice, Poetry of Lesterfield Middleton. All right, it's going to keep going. So Dr. Hilliard, the first publication, first book that I found out about in I think it was 1976, actually, I guess it was 1977, 76, 77, one of those, was Stolen Legacy. And it was put out by Dr. George G.M. James, and that's a picture of Dr. James there. And so to me, if you're going to get a Stolen Legacy, and there are many versions out there, you can get a PDF version of Stolen Legacy. You can go to Squibbed and type in Stolen Legacy. There are many versions, but to me, maybe it's because it was the first one that I came across, is a Richardson Press version of Stolen Legacy. Richardson Press means Marcus Bookstore. So what Dr. Hilliard did, he was in a historically Black college in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He was in the president's office, and he was looking at the president's library, and he spied this book, Stolen Legacy, and then he brought it to Julian Richardson of Marcus Bookstore, and they reprint it, the first copies. You know, it had been like 20 years of Stolen Legacy. And the reason why I like it is because he has an introduction. And this is the first paragraph. The first and second paragraph are really powerful and really profound. And he says, mental bondage is invisible violence. Formal physical slavery has ended. Excuse me. I'm going to ask somebody else to read that. Somebody from our audience, take yourself off mute. Would you read that? Somebody go ahead. Anyone.
I'll do it. Mental bondage is invisible violence. Formal physical slavery has ended in the United States. Mental slavery continues to this present day. This slavery affects the minds of all people, and in one way, it is worse than physical slavery alone. That is, the person who is in mental bondage will be self-contained. Not only will that person fail to challenge beliefs and patterns of thought which control him, he would defend and protect those beliefs and patterns of thought virtually with his last dying effort.
You know, this needs to be in like, thank you, Sugar D. This needs to be like, you know, Kanye West needs to make a version of this part. Jay-Z. I would like to hear Beyonce come out with a version of it. We need to send this to the Marley Brothers. They're coming out with a new song. I think it's next week. You know, this is something that needs to be in our heads over and over. You know, so not only will that person fail to challenge beliefs and patterns of thought which control him, he will defend and protect those beliefs and patterns of thought virtually with his last dying effort. And how many times have we seen that? You know, this might be in your family. This might be your coworkers or somebody you work with, somebody you know, somebody you love, but they're, you know, mental bondage is invisible violence. You know, it's not so apparent. Formal physical slavery has ended in the United States. Mental slavery continues to this present day. And it makes the person in mental bondage self-contained. So that's why I like the Asa Hilliard. That's why I like the Richardson Press, because it's the only place where this is found. The Richardson Press, Stolen Legacy. All right. So just want to say a few words about Dr. George G.M. James. And Dr. James, you know, so would you say George G.M. James? I don't know. I guess this was a name back in the day, because I've you know, there's Granville T. Woods, and there's you know, so his name, George Granville Moniah James. Wow. You know, he was from Guyana, and he wrote Stolen Legacy in 1954. Look at his credentials. He earned his bachelor's and master's at Durham University in England, gained his doctorate at Columbia University in New York. He was a professor of logic, Greek, at Livingston College in Salisbury, North Carolina. And then he went on to Arkansas AM&N College in Pine Bluff. And he died, kind of mysteriously after publishing Stolen Legacy in 1954. He was a Freemason, and he was associated with the Prince Hall Freemasonry. Now, we're starting this month, African History Month, and this is the guy that started it, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. And I want to thank my mother. My mother started on our block. It was just called the Block Club, and when it was actually Negro History Week, we would meet on like Friday, like 4 in the afternoon, and she pulled out something I'd never heard of before. And when I say the Block Club, it was all the kids on my block. I mean, we had a president, we had a vice president, we had a treasurer, we had a secretary, and I'm actually still in touch with the secretary. She reached out to our family when my father had passed. But I was introduced kind of like in a formal way with Carter G. Woodson. I happen to know a person that has all 66 volumes of the Journal of Negro Life. So there were 66 volumes of the Journal of Negro Life. And as we continue about him, so most of his academic career was spent at Howard University, where Shango, he's always talking about Howard, in DC, where Woodson eventually served as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And he, in his preface to Miseducation of the Negro, this is a famous quote, okay? This first paragraph, he says, no systematic education. Well, hey, I'm not going to read. I want somebody else to help me out. I want somebody else to read that. Somebody else, beautiful voice, sister or brother. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll read it.
Yeah.
No systematic effort toward change has been possible for taught the same economics, history, philosophy, literature, and religion, which have established the present code of morals. The Negro's mind has been brought under the control of his oppressor. The problem of holding the Negro down, therefore, is easily solved. When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary. The same educational process which inspires and stimulates the oppressor with the thought that he is everything and has accomplished everything worthwhile, depresses and crushes at the same time the spark of genius in the Negro by making him feel that his race does not amount to much and never will measure up to the standards of other peoples. The Negro, thus educated, is a hopeless liability of the race.
All right, that's good.
That's it.
Good.
Okay.
That's good. So, how many people do you know in your life that you've run across, or you might see on the news? Or, they're actually cutting the back door. They go to the back door in their mind automatically. They go there without being told. You don't have to say, hey, get over there in that back door. Some people just automatically, some people just go to that back door without being told. if it's not one there, they'll cut one. Wow. He
Wow.
wrote this in 1933. 1933. Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Let's move on. So Dr. Hilliard reminds us that we African people created the first civilization. And he gives this, I can't click on this, but so number one, he says African people created the first civilization. He says African people are the first people on the planet. You know, that's not in dispute. You know, there's nobody's gonna say no. That's not in dispute. It says African people are the first people on the planet, and then he goes on to say African people are the modern type. So when they talk about, you know, Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo Neanderthal, and Homo sapiens, all of those phases of the physicality of which eventually went on to become the human body form, all of those develop in Africa. Again, I want to reiterate, he says there's a cultural unity, that people who are linked together by cultures and the impact of Africa on other cultures. And then he tells us, Dr. Hilliard says, beware of Greeks bearing philosophy or mythology. We need to talk about our Holocaust story, our Ma'afa story, the story of our resistance, the story of our creativity, people history, more than just kings and queens. Everybody wants to be kings and queens. Just think about that. Not everybody was a king and queen. You know, just think of a society, everybody's a king and queen. No, that's not true. Okay. So, you know, just moving on. And this first example here on my left, where I'm doing an arrow, this comes out of Anthony Browder's book, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And in that book, it shows you the evolution of the alphabet, you know, beginning with the Kemetic, going to the so-called Semitic and Phoenician. The Phoenicians, or the Canaanites, as they were called, and these were the people that came from what's now Palestine and Lebanon and that region, and actually around 200 BC went to what's called present-day Tunisia and started the Carthaginian civilization, Carthaginians, out of which the great general Hannibal comes. They took the Kemetic alphabet and introduced it to the world, because they were mariners. They sailed up and down the Mediterranean, colonizing and civilizing the Greeks and the people that were in Rome, that were the Etruscans. And so Anthony Browder gives us the evolution. And here is another example of how, and you can see how things started. It started out pictures, and then, you know, the Phoenicians were mariners, and so, you know, you're doing something on your boat, you don't have time to draw all those birds and all that stuff, you know. So they came up with a shorthand that got introduced to the Greeks and got introduced, which we call Latin, or the Roman people. All right. And here it shows the, you know, the evolution, how these things happen. So, so-called Egyptian hieroglyphics. It's older than this date, but 3500 BC. Let's just go with that. and then it goes into Byblos or Lebanon, Proto-Sinaitic, Canaanite, Phoenician, which goes on. Whoops, I didn't mean to go. Whoops, let me go back here. You know, and then from that, you have the Greek, you have the Hebrew, you have the Samaritan, you have the Etruscan, you have Latin, you have Gothic, you have modern Europe, all of these things. And then then you go over here, Aramaic. You know what? You should look this up. The Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. It's different than what you think. Aramaic, okay, and then Imperial Aramaic, Syriac, Nabatean, Jewish, Indian scripts. All of this comes from the African root. Moving on, this picture actually has the great scholar, he's known as the Pharaoh of antiquity, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. You know, we English speakers, we say Diop, but I understand that the correct pronunciation is Diop. But this is his protege, Dr. Theophile Obenga from the Congo. And he wrote this book. He's written other books, but he wrote this book, Ancient Egypt and Black Africa. I'm going to stop now. Let's see. I see somebody put something in the chat. Let's see what they say. Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something, you know.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to put it in the chat for those who might be interested. All right, thank you.
All right, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. That's great, man. Yeah, put that in the chat. That's outstanding. I'm gonna pause right now and just see. You know, I've been doing a lot of talking. Are there any comments or are there any questions before we press on? Just looking for, you know, I don't want to just be the only one talking. Let's.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I guess. The Carter G. Woodson information, or that you listed, that was important to me for a lot of reasons, and the main one is that I'm into this psychology thing. It's the psychology that is the most important issue for me. And to me, that's why WOZE is like, to me, it's a community of reparations that repairs the mind, the spirit. And so what he talked about to me is like foundational. Dr. Amos Wilson, when he's talking about it, to me, when you focus on the psychology, all the things that he said that can happen without anyone doing anything, the person's going to find a back door and so on. To me, that's the most important thing. And then all of what you're doing here just reinforces it. So that was it.
Yes, thank you for that. Okay, Minister Amadi gave us, this is really good. You should save this. Asa Hilliard, Master Keys. Excellent breakdown for understanding and education. So anyone else would like to make a comment or have a question?
I have a Asa Hilliard story. It's short, but I can share.
All right.
Great.
All right.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I first met Dr. Hilliard. It must have been around 1979 or maybe even 80 when I was a part of the National Black Independent Political Party at that time. And my consciousness was really starting to grow. And my wife and I attended a family reunion here in Oakland, California, up in the hills here. Dr. Hilliard was there. Several of my wife's uncles was there, and it was just a regular family reunion. At that time, we had no idea of the breadth of Dr. Hilliard at that time. And it was about a year and a half later when it became apparent, that the guy was a giant. He was so natural. He was so much a part of the family. They were talking and cajoling, and my a lot of my wife's family is from Oklahoma, and so they were talking about people back there that they knew. And his wife is a second or third cousin to my wife.
Wow.
But the point is, it was in about a year and a half after that, during the first ASCAT conference, and we was on a bus with Dr. Hilliard going to the conference, and he was sharing all this knowledge and all this information, and the way that he was perceived by his peers. I think Rikelke Wimberly at that time, she called herself. She was on that bus. I think Leonard Jeffrey might have been on that bus, and we were just astounded at his statue, and we knew so little about it, and we basically were thinking that we were really fairly conscious at that time. And so it was quite a surprising and quite a very warming and thrilling experience to be with him and have him share the knowledge and stuff that he did, and the fact that we had met him and he was just another guy there at that time. So that's my Dr. Hilliard story.
No, that's wonderful. And I was talking to somebody earlier today about that. Yeah, he's a giant, but he would just be a regular guy. He would just talk to you. He was very sensible. He was humorous. Just always inviting. Just a really a good brother. Aside from being an ED,
right.
And he had been dean of education in San Francisco State, and Fulbright scholar and all that. Mm-hmm. He was just a regular guy. Just a regular brother.
I always appreciated that about him.
Yeah. Anyone else before we continue? Anyone else have a question or a comment? We'd love to hear from you. All right, everybody's kind of quiet, huh? Okay. Well, I'll keep talking. All right.
Well, I'll add a comment.
Go ahead, Judy. Thank you, Judy. All right.
I was just going to say, I really loved and admired Dr. Hilliard, and he passed away when he was living in Atlanta, of course. I mean, that's where he was residing. He was in Africa, or Kemet, but he was I've seen him speak at several different lectures, and I'm sure there are a few guests on that are here from it, been in Atlanta when he was here. I did go to his 2-day memorial service at Morehouse College at the King Chapel. It was just unbelievable, dignitaries, we said kings and queens. There were people from all village, very prosperous and important dignitaries from Africa to honor him, drummers. It was a really big event, and it was a 2-day event, but he was a really beautiful person, just very kind and personable and down to earth, as you mentioned.
Yes. A friend of mine was there. Perhaps you know him. His name is Dr. Kofi Kandwani, and he said that he was involved in the pouring a libation for Dr. Hilliard.
Yeah, I do know Kofi. Yeah.
Kofi is a good friend of mine. He's a really good friend of mine. So I just next time you see him, tell him I said hi. It makes me think I should give him a call.
I will.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to keep going unless there's somebody else that want to say something. All right. Well, hold on. Here we go. Uh-oh. Now I'm back here where I started. Oh, all right. Okay. So we left off with Dr. Theophile Obenga, and this is important. And Dr. Obenga, you know, so he was at San Francisco State for a while. Dr. Obitashaka had brought him there, and he was a visiting professor. And while he was there at San Francisco State, he actually came 100 miles, which here in Sacramento, and he came. It was like every Friday and Saturday for like 6 weeks to teach us Medu Neter. You know, he would come up on a Friday and he would go back and then come back on a Saturday, and he would teach us Medu Neter. And he was talking, and he said, you know, I came up with this. You know, he was very proud of this particular discovery that he had made. And so he was looking at the word philosophy. And he discovered that when you do an etymological search of the word philosophy, that you don't find it in any Indo-European language. You don't find it in Greek. That's interesting right there. You know what I mean? Because people clown you. They say, well, you try to say African origin of philosophy, of course, everybody knows that it's Socrates or somebody like that. And then Dr. Obenga, a linguist who speaks, I think maybe 13 or 14 languages, can read and can you imagine what kind of mind that is? And so he breaks down the whole thing. Well, so the first thing is it can't be explained in Greek or Indo-European language. Wow, that's heavy. That, to me, you could do a whole class just on that. He says, and so he breaks down. He says it's in two words, philo and Sophie. Philo means friend, and then he says there's nothing comparable of phil or philo in other European languages. He said it can't be explained. And so what he came to the conclusion, these words are not Greek origin. Then he goes on to explain, so the second part of philosophy is Sophie, Sophia. Those of you that are old enough to remember, the famous actress, I think she's still alive, Sophia Loren. That is a word. Sophia is a word that means wisdom. But then he starts breaking down its connection to the word Seba, which means to instruct, to educate, to learn. It goes back to the pyramid text. And so what he ends up explaining is that in Greek, the PH in Greek actually is the B in the ancient Kemetic language. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds, but so he breaks all of this down. Anyway, he does a very convincing way of explaining the African origin of that word philosophy. So that word philosophy, can you believe it? The word philosophy is African origin word. So Seba, and this is how it's written in Kemet. And the first person I heard to explain this was Dr. Hilliard again. He says Seba means star or doorway or portal. And that's what a teacher is. A teacher is a doorway to learning and explaining, to teach or instruct. teaching or instruction, school, student or pupil, star. The saber is a representation of the star in religious art, patterned after the starfish with 5 equidistant spokes. The saber was a symbol of the constellation or star gods. Enclosed in a circle, the saber represented the Duat, the other world, where the sun disappeared each night and to which the souls of the dead ascended after death. The word saber means learning or discipline and associated with doorways and gates. Wow. And here's another way. You know, it looks like this saber had to get a stick out and instruct people. Sometime you have to do that. All right. Now I want to move on. Hebrews. How many of, I like old movies, and I'm just going to ask you, how many have seen this movie? This is an old Black movie, and it's called Green Pastures. How many have seen Green Pastures? Okay, Mona, let me see if I can get everybody's picture in here. I'm gonna stop. How many have seen that movie, Green Pastures? So Mona, Minister Amadi, anybody else? So there's to me it's totally humorous. Judy's raised her hand. Yeah, to me it's totally humorous. I think it's hilarious. Because okay. When you go, Minister Alicia thinks she has, so when you see it, God is Black, the angels are Black, everybody in the Bible is Black. And there's a point when Moses comes to see Pharaoh, and Moses does some kind of trick, and Pharaoh says, hey, that's a pretty neat trick. Why haven't I seen you at the palace? And he said, what? He said, what's your names? And then they say, Hebrews. And then they go, and then you hear the sound around the palace, Hebrews. And then the Pharaoh says, is you Hebrews? Okay, you had to have been there. All right, Judy, do you have your hand up to say something, or are you just letting us know that you saw the movie? Judy, Judy, do you want to say something? Okay, I'm going to say maybe not. So these are.
I would like to say something really fast.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
If I could.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just started taking this class. ASCAC presented this class on Meruneter.
Yes.
And so this teacher, her name is Dr. Raketti Amin.
Yes.
She's doing this class. It's for 9 weeks. We just started on Sunday. She tapes all of the classes, and she's sending us, her workbook and things like that. So I just wanted to, I'm going to go ahead on and put her email in the chat. If anyone's really interested, it feels like, she's doing a good overview of Meruneter. And so some of us would just like to, that's why I'm taking the class, because I thought it would be good to just get a sense or begin to understand, get a little understanding about this particular language. So I think it's an opportunity, and she taped the last class, so even if you missed the first class, you could still catch up with it. So I just wanted to say that, to share, I always like to share. I always learn so much from the community, and I always like to share what I have too. So I'm gonna put her information in the chat, and anyone that's interested, if you just text her, but the class is $200. So I just wanted to, make that announcement.
Thank you. That was the Raketti Wembley that Kat was talking about earlier, and she became Raketti Amin. She studied with Dr. Obinga, and she's an excellent linguist. I'm so glad that you put that that you
Yeah.
put that there. That's great information. So getting back to the ancient Hebrews, so this one here with the dreads, these are Hebrew singers. And this, see, notice this is in stone. And here below is the Hebrew. These are Jewish prisoners, and the date on this is 700 BC. And if you notice, the prisoners have the same features as the captors, and these are the Assyrians. Here's the picture again. This is found in the British Museum. Of course, it's no place where, you know, we have access to it, you know, but it's found in the British Museum in London. The Afro-haired men shown above are the ancient Israelites, known as the Hebrews. The image you're looking at is by the Assyrians who destroyed Israel 3,000 years ago. As confirmed by the image, the Hebrews who wrote the Bible were Black people. The Bible among, so this is, okay, getting back to what we started talking about at the beginning. So Whoopi did not know. This is why Hitler wanted to kill the Jews, because Hitler knew his history, and he knew that people who are of the Hebrew religion, their genes go back to Black people. There was a study done, I didn't include this in this PowerPoint, but there was a study done by a group of Jews who were part of a priestly class. They were Levites, and they usually have the last name Cohen. And they did this DNA test and research, and what they found, there's a tribe in Africa called the Limbaugh tribe, and there's a subclan of the Limbaugh tribe. This is like in northern Zimbabwe or Zambia, right around in that region, and they have more Jewish DNA than the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi Jews. This was a DNA study. It was either done in 1997 or 1999. So Whoopi needs to learn some of her history. You know, that she didn't, you know, and this is why they jammed her up. They jammed her up because they don't want nobody talking about this on national television, on The View. Here's some Canaanites. They like these hats. And here's an Assyrian king. He looked like my friend that lives up here, Tashaka Muhammad. 681 BC. Now, this is controversial. I know, like if Manu was on or somebody else was on. Thank you, Minister Ahmadi, for putting the information in the chat on Sister Rochetti's class. I went to Kemet with a group that teach that this statue is not a man, but it's actually a woman, and it's made of the nectar of moisture, tefnut, which they call tefnuti. And here you can see the features. Here's a sister. I'm not sure where she's from. but you can see the similar features. Tefnuti with an African sister. Now, in South Africa, they've discovered cities that go back 200,000 years. And on one of the petroglyphs is this ankh in a circle with rays coming out, 200,000 years. See, this is what Dr. Hilliard is talking about. We need to know the story of the story. Nobody wants to talk about this. 200,000 years ago. Wow. And, you know, it's all worn down now, 200,000 years. But they found, let me go back to this. You see here at the top, these circles, these were metropolitan areas in South Africa. And look, you know, when you get close now, okay, 200,000 years later, this is the way they look. And now this part here is like one of my favorite subjects, which has to do with Atlantis. There's a place in Mauritania that fits the description of Atlantis. And not only that, the Greeks tell us in their maps where Atlantis was. So here, you have to see this from space. You know, this is a picture from a satellite. If you're on the ground, you know, it doesn't look like anything. But here it's in this area in Mauritania. And these are the maps that they made. And here you see the word Atlantis. See there, you know, Libya. That was one of the words that the Greeks had for Africa. It was all called Libya at one point to them. So, and then right over here, see the word Atlantis. Here it is again. Atlantis, right here in that same place. You know that they don't come up with their own stuff. You know, they're coming from us. And see here is a depiction of pottery of Zeus. And if you know anything about Greek history, you know that they teach that the Greek gods came from Ethiopia and that they would go back to Ethiopia once a year for a party, for a celebration. So here is Zeus and Poseidon painted black. I want to say that this is Achilles, but I can't remember, and I don't have the depiction, so I don't want to definitively say this. But this is an African in Greek art. This is Memnon. You know, like in the Iliad and the Odyssey, Memnon. This is a statue of Memnon.
I think that's my uncle.
Is that your uncle?
Yeah, I think that's my uncle.
Who said that?
Darnisha.
Darnisha, that's where your uncle lived? Yeah, I'll send you this picture if you remind me. So I forget. So, now, I believe it was 1972 or 73, France received a shipment of uranium from Gabon. And when they got this shipment, they discovered that it had already been used. And so, they had to investigate, and they went to this place in Gabon called Oklu. And what they discovered was a natural nuclear reactor. Well, they said it was a natural one, but there are scientists that say, you can't have a natural nuclear reactor. You have to set up certain conditions for that. And so this in Oklu, 2 billion year old nuclear reactor. And where I got this, where I got this, it says, notice the melted rocks from the heat of fission reaction, which happened billions of years ago. We don't know how old we are. We don't know how long we've been around. 6,000? No. 10,000? No. 200,000? Now you're getting warmer. So I just want to go over a few things. We're getting shorter on time, but so you've heard of the caduceus, right? And this is the Bedetti. This is the wing solar disk. Let me show you the origin of it. So here you see the Neteru, Jehudi, it's known as the measurer, and he has the serpent staffs. And this is in the temple of Abydos. I didn't take this picture, but I've taken pictures of this, and he's giving, what is he giving? The ankh, the life. He's putting it to the nostrils of the Per-Ah, not the pharaoh, the Per-Ah Seti. And then we continue on. We can see the origin, the sun, disk, the staff, with the serpents going up and down. And we don't get any residuals. The Africans don't get any residuals because this symbol is used in every medical field today, even dentistry. The African, there's an African origin of the Great Seal of the United States. This is representative of Hor or Heru. But when we look at the contrast of this, we see it has arrows in one talent and olive branch on the other. This is supposed to mean war and peace, or carrot and a stick. And there are 13 arrows, 13 leaves and berries, 13 stars, going back to the story of Wasir, Aset, and Heru. But you notice here, and this was found in the tomb of King Tut. He's holding, see, this is the Sank. This means eternal life. This means eternity. And and the Ankh means like, so he's holding eternal life in both of his talents. But this is talking about war and peace. But you can see the origin of it. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited. All right, so and here we see Wasir seated on the square. You know, the compass and the square. He's seated on the square, and we see the origin of the Confederate flag. See this X with the stars in it? This is the origin of it. Let me show you some other representations of it. So that's the Confederate flag. Here it is again. Is this here with the X? And Astra Kwesi has a video, African Origin of Masonic Order. And he shows this, and he shows how this is actually depicted in I think it was Dallas, Texas. So here, the sun, and you know what happens, men, when the sun rises, sometimes you rise. Okay, I think we're all mature enough. We don't need no sniggling. Okay, but this origin. Maybe this is what they mean, the South will rise again. All right, so, and here again, it's all mathematics. From the vignette of the Book of the Dead of Heru Ben, the singer of Amen was the daughter of this high priest, and it comes from the 21st dynastic period, but it really is giving us what we talk about when we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem. See that? I don't have time to go into it in great detail. Your eyes will probably glaze over. But we're talking about our story, the aim of education. This is how the Madonna used to be. And then it devolved into Mary, and then, so it says before, after, and way after. And when we talk about dying on the cross, it's really talking about the SUN. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were talking about the Sabbath. And I said, well, you know, Sunday is not the Sabbath. Sunday is the first day, so it's not the Sabbath. But the reason why they adopted it is because it's focusing on the sun. So they see Saturday is the Sabbath, and Saturday represents Saturn. I don't have time to go into it, but when you see a clergy person and they have a white collar around that neck, that represents the ring of Saturn. When you see, like even women, when they have earrings, in ancient times, they used to wear earrings so they could hear Saturn. And here, you know, this is just another depiction. You know, so Freemasonry is actually a copy of African spirituality. And here, see, even there's this depiction of George Washington, you know, at a Kemetic funeral, and his ba is leaving the body. This picture on the right, I first saw in that DVD that Astra Kwesi has, African Origin of Freemasonry. And I was talking to somebody, should I call their name? But I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and we were talking about the Jehovah's Witness. And I had to tell him that the Jehovah's Witness, the founder, Charles Taz Russell, he's buried in this cemetery with the perneter here. And that symbol with the cross, the double cross going through the crown, that's the symbol. Let me make it bigger. That's the symbol of a Scottish Rite Mason. Now come back over here. Get up. So, trying to make this so you can see it, sisters and brothers. See, when you talk about Scottish Rite, that means a 32-degree Mason. Lord have mercy. You know, they're trying to tell us what's right. You know, you can't do this, can't celebrate that. You know, I don't know how the Jackson 5 even did recording. They're supposed to be Jehovah's Witness. You know, you have all these restrictions, and then you go back. Look, this man is. Let me get back here.
They probably let them do it because they was tied into the church.
Probably. Probably.
They was getting 10%.
Yeah, oh, right. But here, this, I used to think this was his grave. This isn't his gravestone, but this is like see where these other headstones. He's buried in the cemetery, and this is here. Our story of our creativity, Granville T. Woods, telephone transmitter, railway systems, subway system, roller coasters. Look him up, Granville T. Woods. I don't have time to go into it. Louis Haber wrote a book called Black Pioneers of Science and Invention. There's also a thing about him in J.A. Rogers' Great Men of Color, Volume 2. One of America's greatest electrical engineers was not allowed to finish elementary school, patented over 100 electrical and mechanical inventions. Woods had many patents purchased by General Electric, Westinghouse, Bell, Thomas Edison. He successfully sued Thomas Edison in court for stealing his patents on 2 occasions. We need to talk about our Holocaust story. Look at this man. He's sitting with a whole bunch of heads cut off. And here, these are our brothers in Australia. You talk about our Holocaust, the Middle Passage. You imagine? I have a hard time driving from here to the Bay Area. You imagine this trip? Oh, and you know, this song, I spelled Holocaust wrong. Let's see, let me spell this right. Let me get this. I might want to use this again. I think it's O, right? Whoops. Holocaust. I still didn't spell it right. I'm such a terrible speller. How do you spell it? Let me just see. Spelling is yes. Okay. Change. All right. And it always does that. Go back to where it was. Well, I guess we're getting to the end, huh? Let me see. Somebody just cheered. No, just kidding. All right. So we're almost done. Got 5 minutes. All right. You know, we love this song. What is the song? Amazing Grace. We sing it like nobody else can sing it. But did you know that the author, the composer of that song, was a man by the name of John Newton, who heard the mournful chants of the people underneath him and composed a song that we know now as Amazing Grace. The slave ship captain wrote that song. Getting ready to come up with the Oscars. Here's the origin of that statue. We had a story of resistance. Need to talk about that. This made the papers. This is a depiction of Nat Turner applauding his slave rebellion that took place in Southampton, Virginia. Of course, we know about Toussaint Louverture. Yeah, we need to talk about our resistance. See, this made the papers. We need to talk about our presence in the Americas. These heads are found in these places. Why are these Africoid heads found there? We need to study that. And here's Anthony Browder standing next to an Olmec head. And I think that's it. All right. I've bored you enough, sisters and brothers.
Most excellent, most excellent.
Definitely was.
It was
Really
good.
enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for the knowledge. Thank you so much for the thought in my head, so I can go back and do some research. Thank you.
Now I want everyone to save the chat because there's some good information in the chat that was put in. Save the chat. Don't forget that. I wasn't trying to rhyme. That's for another Black Knowledge Matter. We're going to rhyme. All right.
Okay,
are
Black
there any?
Knowledge Matters starts with Black History Month.
That's right.
That's where we
right.
are.
That's
and
right.
This really started it well. Thank you, brother.
No, give thanks. Yes. So I think we're coming to the end of 6:28. I'm glad that you all could join us today. Hopefully something that was said would inspire you to do some more study and research. You know, the aims of an education. Thank you, Shabaka. Thank you. Yes, indeed. So go ahead.
I would like to make a comment. I really enjoyed that the presentation. I wanted to say, now I had sort of a revelation, my personal revelation, while I was watching that, and I've had some conversation with people about language. You know, what was there before language, before we could really have written language. So it dawned upon me, this is just my own personal thoughts and observation, but it seems to me that, first of all, a picture is worth 1,000 words. It's the imagery, the importance of imagery and symbols, and these pictures that you did a comparison of how things were stolen, and we see the same, you know, many of the same garments and all of that. But I'm thinking as well, these images had powers. You know, these images were a language, and these symbols put together before I can only imagine when you talk about us going back 200,000 years and plus, even more, that perhaps before, and I wanted to kind of see what you thought about this, as because I'm not really knowledgeable on the history of language and written language, but I would imagine that at some point, maybe even before written language, people were reading, these symbols were the language. People were able to quickly, when you look at all the different ways you can break down and analyze and, take a magnifying glass and look at each little corner, and you have, a whole story behind that. So my question is, I would want to believe, that these Europeans and Masons and all, they knew that there was a power not only in the words, but they may not have understood it all, but they knew it was something about some magic behind these symbols. So they duplicate them just in case. And they put these things together because it's another way of looking at our language.
Well, there's a whole psychology around that. And, we didn't have really time to get into it, but before there was a written language, I'm just going to say people because, they were just people on the African continent and actually in other continents as well. They didn't need to read. They didn't need to write it down. There's he was a Sangoma, which is a priest in South Africa. His name was Credo Mutwa. And he's talking about, kind of like what Dr. Hilliard is talking about, the story before the story. He said there was a time when a man wanted to speak to his wife, he just thought about her and he could communicate to her. There was a time, this is according to Credo Mutwa, when a man, when he wanted to get some food, he would just think about it, and the limb would come down and offer that piece of fruit. So there was a time when we didn't need to write it down. And then over time, nothing remains the same. Over time, things devolved and we had to write it down. And when you see those symbols, they do have an effect on the right and left hemisphere of your brain. More on your right, because there's symbolism. I didn't show this one symbolism because I thought maybe it was extreme. So there's this one, and maybe I'll show it next time. It actually, on one side, it has the feminine genitalia. And on the other side, it shows going into like the Temple of Notre Dame, the doorway. It's almost exactly the same. So somebody knows about that. Nothing that they put like in a building like that is made for chance. So
Wow.
you're right. So you're right. And like if I show you this picture, I just have it on my phone. I didn't include it. You'll just be like, you'll never look at a church doorway the same again. Wait a minute. Let me send it to myself. If you got some time, hold on. I'm going to send it because I should have put it there. If you have time, hold tight.
Minister Imhotep,
Yes.
I would love to request it at the appointed time, of course. Could we have a class from you on another part on language and, what we're discussing now? Because I had this conversation with a person who told, I said, and you're confirming it to me from my own personal thoughts, and we could talk about it later, but I just wanted to say, I thought that if a person was born in a forest without parents and they never learned and they were never taught a formal language and or were taught to write per se, I said, are you I challenged the person, are you telling me you don't think that person could think because they don't have a language? I said, I can't imagine there's not a first language, which is the language of silence that has powers. But that's for another discussion. But that's what you're really confirming for me in my own personal analysis, because I do believe, we can't just think that, like you're saying, that it's just by chance, a coincidence that they are mocking all these symbols and everything they have on the dollar and the coins. They know there's a power. We just have so little knowledge of ourselves.
Yes. Okay, so I got it now. Let me share my screen with us one more time. And thank you all for staying over. We've gone over 6 minutes, so I want to be cognizant of your time. Hold tight. Can everyone see that? You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why they make things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make it up. When they talk about the hymen and then your hymnal,
Mm-hmm.
and then this Greek goddess. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So you next time you go to a church like this, you'll never look at it the same. I just thought it might be a little strong, but yeah, they know. They know exactly. Yes, they do.
Yes,
Mhm.
they do.
Yes, they do. All
And
right.
what's going to be the session for next Wednesday?
I wish I knew. We're working on it. Actually, what I'd like to do, and I haven't had a chance. Maybe I could work with Judy and Darnisha, if you guys would work with me. We need to plan out like a schedule for the next couple of months, so that when we ask that question, so that's a good question, Mama Afua. The short answer is I don't know,
Okay.
but we'll have a schedule by next Wednesday that should go out a couple of months, and then we could proceed.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I have several people who have said they would like to present on some really interesting topics. So.
Oh, well, great. Yeah. So let's get together tomorrow. And we can we can work on that. Maybe you can send me something. Judy, do you have my email?
I do.
Okay, yeah. If you wouldn't mind sending me some, and CC Darnisha on it.
Okay.
Anybody else want to work on that? Anybody else? Okay, and Sugar D on that too. Okay.
2 Tuskegeans.
2 Tuskegeans. That's right.
And one SF stater.
And 1 SF. No, 2 SF staters. 2 because yeah.
3.
Yes. Okay. Hey, look. Well, Alicia put in to the chat that she wants to present again. So, all right. So we'll have Alicia on there too.
I said De Leon.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Maybe that was like a subliminal message,
I know,
Minister
right? I was
Alicia.
like, oh, wait.
Right. So, I loved his presentation. I just want to get his mic up,
Yeah, that's what I told him. I said, definitely when we get your mic corrected, then definitely we'll love to have you back, because he has a lot of information, but I didn't know what was going on with the mic. So I let him know that. So as soon as we can get that together.
Okay, that would be great. Alicia, I really enjoyed him, but you had to listen closely. Maybe that was part of his plan. We had to listen really close. So,
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I just saw him the other day when we were out there, and he is talking about a lot of technical things. I'm like, wow, I can't even understand.
And also Minister Imhotep, also, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Dr. Chika Akua. He's an educator, graduate of Hampton University.
I'm not.
No. Okay, well, he's here in Atlanta, and has a lot of different curriculums, African centered. He's really, you know, into the education of and curriculums. But I was going to say, he has a dynamic video on the Muafa, which is the Black Holocaust.
Yes.
And anyway, and I sent him a message tonight about coming on. I know him, so we'll talk.
All right. All right. So looks like we have a good start to get things on, and let's include the poetry night, and we'll go from there. All right. One love, my friends. I hope you got something out of the aim of an African-centered education. We'll see you
great.
We'll see you next week. We'll see you Sunday. Take care. Life, prosperity, and health. Live up.